Beneath the restless oceans lie forgotten structures, their edges softened by tides, their stones entombed in silence. In the deserts, winds carry whispers of cities erased, foundations swallowed by sand, as though the earth itself sought to hide them. Across mountains and jungles stand monuments whose age seems to stretch beyond the reach of memory. Carved by hands we cannot name, humanity tells itself a comforting story that it is the first, the only, the singular flame of intelligence to rise from the dust of this planet. Our calendars begin in recent millennia, our pride in progress measured in centuries. Yet the earth is older than every myth, older than every word, older than every dream. If our entire recorded history is but the blink of an eye, what might have filled the countless eons before that blink? Geology speaks of ages where continents drowned and rose again, where fire and ice scoured the surface clean. Myths from every culture echo with tales of floods and vanished kingdoms, of golden ages and sudden endings. Some speak of gods who walked the earth, others of starborn teachers, and in the rocks and ruins, faint anomalies endure, artifacts without context, puzzles without answers, questions that refuse silence. What if these are not mere curiosities, but fragments of an untold story? What if time is not a straight path, but a wheel turning, endlessly erasing, renewing, and leaving only faint traces of those who came before? The question lingers, unsettling and irresistible. What if we are not the first civilization on this earth? It began not with satellites or particle colliders, but with the soil beneath human feet. In the 19th century, when the spade first met the sands of Mesopotamia, archaeology was still young, still uncertain whether it was science or curiosity. Scholars dug into the earth, uncovering tablets pressed with cuneiform signs, strange marks from a people whose voices had long been extinguished. In those broken shards emerged the first whispers of Sumer, a civilization older than scripture, older than the stories of Greece and Rome that Europe had long taken as the beginning of history. Egypt followed. In the valley of the Nile, colossal stones revealed a kingdom whose roots stretched deep into antiquity. The pyramids stood as silent witnesses to a forgotten grandeur, their sheer scale mocking the notion that history was shallow. And then came the Indus Valley, discovered in the early 20th century, vast urban centers, meticulously planned streets, sewer systems that rivaled the ingenuity of modern cities. All of them separated by continents, yet all rising from the mist of deep antiquity. Together, these finds cracked the old narrative. Humanity had once believed civilization to be a recent flowering, perhaps no more than 6,000 years in age. The biblical chronologies, carefully tallied by medieval scholars, had insisted that the earth itself was only a few thousand years old. But archaeology offered something more disturbing. Ruins older than myth, cultures whose origins blurred into mystery. Yet even as timelines expanded, anomalies began to emerge. Maps copied and recopied through the Middle Ages hinted at knowledge far beyond the reach of the societies that carried them. The Piri race map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, contained coastlines of South America, sketched with uncanny precision, coastlines only fully mapped with modern satellites. Some lines even suggested an awareness of Antarctica beneath its ice, an impossibility by conventional history. Whether coincidence, misinterpretation, or the echo of an older cartography, it planted a seed of doubt. Stone, too, carried its riddles. Cyclopean walls in South America, their blocks cut with machine-like precision, interlocked so tightly that even a blade of grass could not slip between them. Scholars attributed them to the Inca, ingenious masons without iron tools. Yet in the silence of those stones, questions multiplied. How were they moved? How were they shaped? And why did their techniques vanish with time? Fossils joined the chorus of unease. Hammerheads entombed in ancient rock, metallic spheres extracted from mines in South Africa, patterns etched into strata that predated humanity itself. Many were explained away as natural curiosities, misidentifications, or outright hoaxes. But their very existence, even disputed, ignited a darker possibility. What if intelligence had left traces far older than accepted history allowed? Amid these discoveries arose the first voices to ask the forbidden question. What if civilization did not begin in the narrow cradle of Mesopotamia 6,000 years ago? What if these ruins and relics were fragments of something far older, something erased? Scholars hesitated, for science moves cautiously, tethered by evidence. Yet imagination seeped through the cracks. The 19th century, with its fascination for lost worlds, gave birth to myths of Atlantis and Lemuria, speculative continents where vanished cultures thrived. Writers and philosophers, half dreaming, half theorizing, filled the void with visions of forgotten ages. Scientists dismissed them, yet their popularity revealed a deeper hunger. Humanity longed to believe it was not alone in time. For the archaeologist, the challenge was not only to uncover ruins, but to weave them into a coherent timeline. Pottery shards, carbon dates, stratified layers of earth, these became the language of legitimacy. Yet, as the timelines stretched, they also frayed. Sumer was older than Egypt in some reckonings, Egypt older than Sumer in others. The Indus Valley appeared suddenly in full complexity, with no obvious precursor. Civilizations seemed to emerge fully formed, as though knowledge had been inherited rather than invented. The forbidden question lingered like smoke. If civilization appeared so suddenly, was there an older seed, scattered by some hand unseen? Could cycles of rise and fall stretch far beyond the narrow window of written record? As the 20th century dawned, new tools deepened the enigma. Radiocarbon dating revealed that human occupation of the Americas stretched back at least 15,000 years, perhaps more. Cave paintings in France and Spain testified to symbolic thought tens of thousands of years old. And beneath the waters off Yonaguni in Japan, divers discovered formations resembling pyramids, staircases, and avenues, natural or artificial. The debate still unresolved. The earth itself seemed complicit in the mystery. Continents shifted, seas rose and fell, ice advanced and retreated. Entire landscapes could vanish beneath the ocean in less than a millennium. If a culture had once flourished upon those drowned plains, what evidence could possibly remain? Through it all, one truth became undeniable. The history taught in schools, the tidy arc from primitive man to modern cities, was only a fragment. Humanity was far older, far more complex than anyone had dared imagine. And if so much had been uncovered in a century of digging, how much more might remain buried, waiting for the hand that would brush away the dust? In the silence of archives and deserts, in the echo of forgotten names carved into stone, the forbidden question took root. It was not born in conspiracy or fantasy, but in the unease of discovery itself. Archaeology had sought to ground humanity in certainty, But instead, it had opened the door to a deeper mystery. Perhaps we are not the beginning, but merely the latest page in a book whose earlier chapters lie erased. The question spread quietly, carried by scholars and dreamers alike. What if the monuments of Sumer Egypt and the Indus Valley are not the first, but the survivors, the last flickers of a cycle that stretches into unrecorded ages? What if the true history of Earth is not 6,000 years, nor 60,000, but millions? And in that abyss, other civilizations rose and fell, leaving only whispers in stone and myth. It was a question that science could not yet answer, but once asked, it could not be unasked. It lingered, haunting every excavation, every shard, every fossil that seemed slightly out of place. And from that moment, the story of humanity was no longer one of certainty, but of haunting possibility. The Earth had grown older, and with its age came the unsettling possibility that we might not be the first. For centuries, human history was framed within a narrow horizon. The Earth, it was said, was young, a creation of mere thousands of years. Sacred texts and medieval chronologies placed humanity close to the beginning of all things, the crown of creation upon a planet scarcely older than the civilizations that had risen upon it. Time, in this worldview, was shallow, almost intimate. Every rock, every river, every mountain was thought to have formed within the span of recorded memory. But in the early 19th century, this fragile picture began to fracture. The work of Charles Lyell, a Scottish geologist, would pry open the ground beneath humanity's feet and reveal an abyss of time so vast that the human mind could scarcely endure its scale. Lyell studied landscapes not as static backdrops, but as living chronicles. He saw rivers carving valleys, grain by grain, glaciers grinding mountains to rubble, volcanoes layering the earth with ash and fire. From these processes, he drew a radical conclusion. The Earth was not a stage hastily built, but a monument shaped over eons. Catastrophes had not single-handedly sculpted the planet. Instead, the same slow forces visible today, erosion, sedimentation, tectonic shifts, had been working for ages beyond comprehension. This doctrine, later named uniformitarianism, shattered the prevailing notion of a young Earth. If valleys required millions of years to form, if seas had risen and fallen countless times, then human history occupied only the thinnest surface layer of geological time. Beneath the footprints of empires stretched an ocean of ages. It was a revelation both liberating and terrifying. For the first time, humanity was forced to imagine a past not measured in millennia, but in millions of years. Civilizations that once seemed ancient Egypt, Sumer, Babylon, were reduced to a momentary spark against a backdrop of unfathomable antiquity. The shock deepened with Charles Darwin. Building upon Lyell's vision of vast time, Darwin proposed that life itself had emerged not in sudden creation, but through slow, ceaseless change. In 1859, On the Origin of Species, unveiled the mechanism of natural selection, a process requiring spans of time so immense that human imagination could barely trace them. Species, he argued, were not fixed, but transformed through adaptation, struggle, and chance. Across epochs that stretched into the tens and hundreds of millions of years, in this vision, humanity was not the pinnacle of a short cosmic story, but the late-born child of an Earth endlessly experimenting with forms of life. The fossils embedded in stone ammonites spiraled into limestone, trilobites locked in shale. The bones of giant reptiles unearthed from cliffs became echoes of vanished worlds, each with its own reign, each extinguished by time. Together, Lyell and Darwin extended the scale of history to a degree almost unbearable. The earth was ancient beyond reckoning, and life upon it had risen and fallen in waves, long before human eyes opened to witness the world. Civilizations measured in centuries now stood like brief campfires, flickering for a night in the darkness of deep time. The consequences were profound. For millennia, human culture had anchored itself in the idea of uniqueness, that humanity was central, singular, ordained. Yet the revelation of deep time placed humanity not at the beginning, but near the edge of an endless procession. If ages of creatures had thrived and vanished, what assurance remained that humanity was permanent? Might it to be but one more chapter in a story stretching back billions of years? This realization ignited fierce resistance. In Victorian society, biblical chronologies still shaped education, faith, and law. To suggest that the earth was millions of years old was to unravel the foundation of history as it was known. Yet the evidence continued to mount. Geological strata bore silent witness to ages stacked like the pages of a book: Cambrian, Ordovician, Devonian, Carboniferous, each marked by life forms alien to human eyes, each ending with extinctions as sudden as they were final. The grandeur of this revelation lay not only in its scientific rigor, but in its philosophical weight. Time was no longer a straight line beginning at Eden. It was a vast ocean in which humanity floated briefly, surrounded by the wreckage of forgotten ages. The concept of deep time unsettled not only religion, but human identity itself. If the earth was billions of years old, then recorded history was but a whisper, a shallow surface upon which we walk without sensing the immensity beneath. Our monuments, pyramids, temples, skyscrapers would one day erode into dust, as countless other forms had before. The ground beneath cities had once been seafloor, jungle, desert, or ice, and would be so again. And with this revelation came a haunting thought: if time is so vast, what else might have occurred within it? Could intelligence have sparked before humanity, only to be lost to erosion and catastrophe? Could other civilizations have risen in those immeasurable gaps, erased without trace? The scale of deep time made the notion suddenly plausible. If the earth has endured for 4.5 billion years, then the window of human history, a mere few thousand years of writing and a few million of species' existence, is but an instant. Against such magnitude, silence may hide stories never told. In laboratories and lecture halls, the debate raged. The champions of deep time laid out their evidence, while defenders of a young earth clung to tradition. Yet, as telescopes sharpened their gaze and fossil beds yielded their secrets, resistance weakened. By the dawn of the 20th century, the ancient age of Earth was no longer questioned in science. Radiometric dating, pioneered in the early 1900s, confirmed what Lyell had glimpsed in rivers and stones. The Earth was not thousands, but billions of years old. The shock of deep time reshaped every branch of knowledge. History became a fleeting footnote in geology. Anthropology, once concerned with dynasties and empires, was forced to reckon with the long prehistory of humankind. Evolutionary biology traced the lineage of life back through unimaginable ages, revealing kinship with every living thing. Astronomy placed Earth within a cosmos itself, billions of years in the making. But perhaps the greatest impact was existential. Humanity was no longer unique in time, nor central in creation. It was fragile, contingent, and transient. The biblical promise of permanence dissolved into the geologic truth of impermanence. Civilizations might rise, but time would erase them. Species might thrive, but extinction was the rule, not the exception. Thus, deep time was not only a scientific revelation, but a philosophical wound. It stripped humanity of its pedestal and placed it within the flow of an ancient river, one that had carried countless forms before and would carry countless forms after. And within that river, the question began to whisper, a question as forbidden as it was inevitable. If so much time has passed unseen, who is to say that we are the first? Lyell and Darwin had not meant to suggest forgotten civilizations. Their work was grounded in rocks and fossils, not speculation. Yet the immensity of time they revealed made room for possibilities beyond imagination. The earth, vast and silent, could have hosted stories long since buried, entire epics erased before human memory began. In the end, the shock of deep time did more than extend history. It dissolved history, scattering it across a horizon so vast that the human story seemed almost invisible. And in that invisibility, a haunting possibility emerged. Perhaps humanity's place on Earth is not as the first flame, but as the latest, a fragile spark in an ancient night. The Earth is a patient archivist. It buries its histories in strata of stone, in layers of silt and clay, in sediments pressed by oceans and hardened by fire. Most of what lives upon its surface disappears without trace. Bones dissolve, wood crumbles, metal corrodes. Yet from time to time, fragments remain, splinters of vanished epochs, clues preserved by accident or miracle within this vast archive of geology. Most discoveries align with the narrative of deep time trilobites. Ferns pressed into coal, the bones of titans embedded in limestone. But scattered through this record are anomalies, objects that should not exist where they are found. They are called out-of-place artifacts, OP. Each is a whisper of something inexplicable, a fragment that seems to belong to another story, another civilization, or another time entirely. Some are explained, dismissed, or exposed as frauds. Others remain enigmas. Together, they form a constellation of unease, evidence that may not prove a forgotten age of intelligence, but refuses to vanish from the conversation. The Antikythera mechanism. The most famous of these anomalies emerged from the Aegean Sea in 1901, off the coast of the island of Antikythera. Sponge divers stumbled upon the wreck of an ancient ship, its cargo scattered across the seafloor. Among statues of bronze and marble lay a corroded lump of metal, encrusted with barnacles and time. For decades it seemed insignificant, until, under X-ray analysis, in the mid-20th century, the truth was revealed. Inside the corroded mass was a machine, not a simple tool, but a clockwork of astonishing complexity. Bronze gears meshed with precision, dials marked with Greek inscriptions, pointers calibrated to celestial cycles. Today it is known as the Antikythera mechanism, and it is widely regarded as the first known analog computer. Its function was extraordinary. By turning a hand crank, the device could predict eclipses, track the movements of the sun, moon, and planets, and even model the irregular orbit of the moon with mathematical accuracy. Built in the 2nd century BC, it demonstrated an understanding of astronomy and mechanical engineering centuries ahead of what history had assumed possible. The Antikythera mechanism is not dismissed as fantasy. It is real, studied by engineers and historians alike. Yet its existence remains disquieting. No other device of similar complexity survives from antiquity. It appears as a technological singularity, a marvel without predecessors or successors, as though it were a relic of knowledge, lost and never fully regained. It forces the question, what else has been forgotten? The Russian nanospiralson, 1991. While prospecting for gold in the Ural Mountains, geologists sifting river sediments encountered tiny metallic objects. Under microscopes, these fragments revealed startling forms: coils, spirals, and shafts made of tungsten, molybdenum, and copper. Their dimensions ranged from a few millimeters down to micrometers, so small that some resembled nanostructures engineered for electronics. Initial studies suggested they were not natural crystals but manufactured shapes. Some appeared to conform to proportions akin to modern aerospace designs. Yet the strata in which they were found dated to the Pleistocene, tens of thousands of years old. Skeptics argue that the objects are the byproducts of modern drilling or mining. Their presence in ancient sediments the result of contamination. Others contend that their composition and form defy such easy dismissal. No definitive answer has been reached. The artifacts remain in museums, their status unresolved, their mystery intact. To some, they are curiosities. To others, they are tantalizing evidence of knowledge from a time before humanity's own. The hammer in stone, perhaps the most controversial of alleged OHRTs, is the so-called London hammer. In 1936, near London, Texas, a couple walking along a creek bed discovered a piece of wood protruding from a rock nodule. Upon breaking it open, they found the remains of a hammer, a wooden handle, partially fossilized, encasing an iron head with a purity rarely achieved even by modern standards. The rock itself was claimed to date to over 100 million years, placing the hammer's presence in a paradox that defied all logic. How could a human tool be embedded in stone, far older than humanity itself? Scientists remain skeptical. The hammer may be authentic as an artifact, but the rock nodule encasing it could have formed around the object through natural concretion processes, far more recent than the geologic strata surrounding it. Critics point to the lack of rigorous documentation of its discovery. Yet, despite these explanations, the hammer continues to surface in discussions of anomalous finds, a symbol of the possibility, however remote, of deep-time civilizations. The controversy of OHRTs 4. Every artifact hailed as evidence of the impossible. There are others dismissed as misinterpretations or hoaxes. Human footprints alongside dinosaur tracks, crystal skulls carved with modern tools, coins embedded in coal. Many have been debunked under scrutiny. The scientific community remains cautious, and rightly so. Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence, and the standards of geology and archaeology are unforgiving. Yet even when anomalies are dismissed, their allure lingers. The human imagination is drawn to the edges of certainty, to the cracks where doubt seeps in. Why do these objects captivate so deeply? Perhaps because they confront humanity with the possibility that its story is incomplete, that there are chapters erased by time which may never be recovered. Mainstream science explains most anomalies within the framework of error, fraud, or natural processes, and yet a few, like the Antikythera mechanism, refuse to dissolve so neatly. They stand as monuments, not to impossibility, but to forgotten brilliance. Why the debate persists, the controversy over upper parts, is not merely about objects. It is about time itself. The fossil record is sparse, preservation rare. Entire species can vanish without leaving a trace. Civilizations, more fragile still, can disappear almost completely within thousands of years. Wood rots, metals corrode, cities are buried or eroded. Over millions of years, the Earth recycles its surface in this light. It becomes conceivable that traces of intelligence could vanish almost entirely. If humanity were to fall today, what would remain in a million years? Skyscrapers would crumble, bridges would rust, plastics might persist in fragments, and only faint signatures in the geologic record would hint at an industrial age. To future discoverers, the Anthropocene might appear as a thin layer of carbon, plastics, and isotopes, the barest shadow of all that exists now. The Silurian Hypothesis, proposed by NASA scientists Adam Frank and Gavin Schmidt, takes this seriously. It asks, if another industrial civilization arose millions of years ago, what evidence would survive? Their conclusion is unsettling. Very little. Artifacts would vanish. Only geochemical anomalies, spikes in carbon dioxide, unusual isotope ratios, traces of synthetic materials might endure. In other words, the absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence. Haunting unresolved questions. This understanding frames the allure of impossible artifacts. The Antikythera mechanism may not prove a lost civilization, but it proves that knowledge can be achieved, then forgotten. The Russian nanospirals may be contamination, or they may point to a skill beyond known history. The London hammer may be a curiosity of geology, or something stranger. Each possibility carries weight. For mainstream science, the burden of proof remains unsatisfied. Yet the artifacts serve another role. They remind humanity that certainty is fragile, that history is constructed not only from what is found, but from what is lost. The gaps are vast, and within those gaps, imagination breeds. Myths of Atlantis and other lost worlds persist, because they embody a possibility that science cannot fully extinguish. That humanity is not alone in time, that others may have come before. The artifacts, real or disputed, serve as anchors for that possibility. A fragile archive time is the great eraser. What survives into the present is not the rule, but the exception. The Antikythera mechanism endured because it sank with a ship and was preserved underwater. The Russian nanospirals were found because a geologist's sieve happened to catch them. The hammer emerged because erosion exposed a concretion on a Texas creek bed. Each artifact exists not because preservation is common, but because it is miraculous. If these few anomalies can survive, how much more may have been lost? And how much might still lie buried, waiting for accident to bring it into light? The earth guards its secrets with stone and fire. Humanity's tools, machines, and monuments may one day share the fate of forgotten ages, reduced to fragments, curiosities, or whispers of what once was. Op arts remain in limbo, neither proof nor illusion, neither wholly accepted nor fully dismissed. They hover at the threshold of science and speculation, fueling debates that stretch across decades. Their greatest power may not be in what they reveal, but in what they suggest, that the known story of civilization is fragile, provisional, perhaps incomplete, that the archive of the earth is not a book read in full, but one torn and scattered, with entire chapters missing. and in those missing pages lies the forbidden possibility that humanity dares only to whisper. What if others have walked this path before? What if the tools of forgotten civilizations lie not in museums, but in dust, in stone, in oceans, yet unsounded? The buried evidence remains faint, elusive, and often contested. Yet, the very existence of anomalies keeps alive the haunting suspicion that the story of intelligence on Earth may be far older and far stranger than we can prove. The Earth is a palimpsest. Each layer of stone is a page written in the language of fossils. Bones, shells, and imprints of vanished creatures press themselves into rock, forming a record of life across unimaginable spans of time. Paleontology is the science of reading this archive, of reconstructing entire worlds from fragments, the curl of an ammonite, the tooth of a mammal, the shadow of a fern pressed into coal. This record reveals a story of constant change. For over 3 billion years, life has transformed, diversified, and perished in cycles. Dinosaurs ruled for more than 160 million years, only to vanish in a geological heartbeat. Mammals, once small and obscure, rose in their absence. From primates came hominids, and from hominids modern humans, wielding fire and language. Yet within this archive, intelligence is an anomaly. Of the millions of species fossilized, only one has left behind evidence of symbolic thought, of art, of industry. Human intelligence is so recent that it occupies a sliver of geological time, a thin scratch upon a canvas billions of years wide. And in that perspective, a question emerges. Is there room within the fossil record for precursors? Could another intelligence have walked this earth long before humanity, only to be erased? The rarity of fossilization, the fossil record, is incomplete by its very nature. Fossilization is not the destiny of every creature, but the rarest of accidents. For bones to survive, they must be buried quickly, shielded from decay, mineralized under just the right conditions. Soft tissues almost never persist. Entire ecosystems can vanish without leaving a single trace, even among species that lived in abundance. Only a fraction remain visible in stone. Entire lineages may have risen and fallen unnoticed, their evidence eroded or subducted into the mantle. Paleontologists know this well. The record is less a book than scattered paragraphs, with whole chapters missing. If intelligence had emerged in deep time, not human, but another form, perhaps reptilian, avian, or even cephalopod, what evidence would remain? Tools of wood or bone would rot. Settlements of clay might wash away. Even metals, without continual use and replenishment, would corrode into dust. After millions of years, entire civilizations might dissolve into nothing. What could survive? At best, fossils of unusual morphology or geochemical anomalies left by industry. But given the rarity of preservation, it is conceivable that intelligence could have flared briefly in deep time and left no enduring bones in stone. Dinosaurs and the Road Not Taken. The reign of the dinosaurs illustrates this possibility. For over 160 million years, they dominated every habitat on Earth. Some grew to titanic proportions. Others shrank into nimble form. Recent studies reveal their complexity. Feathers adorning their bodies, social behaviors etched into trackways, parental care inferred from nests and eggs. Could such creatures have developed intelligence rivaling our own? The fossil record suggests their brains were, on average, small relative to body size. Yet intelligence is not always tied to size. Birds, descendants of dinosaurs, demonstrate surprising cognitive abilities. Corvids can solve puzzles, use tools, and even recognize themselves in mirrors. Parrots mimic language and comprehend abstract concepts. These abilities hint that the seeds of intelligence existed within the dinosaur lineage. Paleontologist Dale Russell once imagined an alternative path. If the asteroid had not ended the Cretaceous, could some dinosaurs have evolved into beings of high intelligence? He speculated a form he called the dinosauroid upright, Toulousing with large eyes and a brain approaching human proportions. It remains speculative, even fanciful. Yet it embodies a haunting thought. Evolution had time and opportunity to produce intelligence long before humanity. The fossil record cannot rule it out with certainty. Mammals before humanity, mammals too, stretch deep into prehistory. For tens of millions of years, they lived in the shadows of dinosaurs, small and nocturnal. After the extinction event, they diversified rapidly, filling ecological niches across the globe. Whales returned to the sea, bats took to the skies, primates climbed into the trees. Within these lineages, intelligence flickered in many forms. Dolphins communicate with complex signals, elephants display memory and mourning, apes craft rudimentary tools. These capacities suggest that intelligence is not a singular event, but a potential woven into evolution itself. But the fossil record of cognition is thin. Brains rarely fossilize, and behavior leaves only indirect traces. Scratches on bones, shaped stones, marks on cave walls. If another species of high intelligence once lived, separated from us by millions of years, the odds of finding its record are slim. The silence of stone may be less a denial than an absence. The Silurian Hypothesis. This possibility was given scientific form in 2018. When NASA astrophysicist Adam Frank and climatologist Gavin Schmidt published what they called the Silurian Hypothesis. Their question was stark. If an industrial civilization had existed millions of years ago, how would we know? Their answer, not through artifacts or fossils, but through geochemistry, the traces of modern humanity, its cities, its technologies, its monuments, would vanish within a few million years. Steel would rust, glass would shatter, plastics would fragment, even concrete would erode. After 10 million years, almost nothing recognizable would remain, but one signature would persist: changes in the Earth's chemistry. Industrial civilization alters the atmosphere, depositing carbon isotopes distinct from natural cycles. Plastics leave synthetic polymers that could endure in centuries. Nuclear activity produces isotopes with half-lives long enough to mark time. Agriculture transforms soils, redistributing nutrients. These geochemical markers might survive even when all physical artifacts are gone. Frank and Schmidt concluded that if a civilization had once risen in deep time, the only evidence might be these subtle fingerprints in the rocks. In essence, the Earth itself would carry the memory, not in monuments, but in chemistry. The silence of the records. So far, no such markers have been confirmed. The fossil record and the geologic record together testify to mass extinctions, climate shifts, and epochs of flourishing life, but no clear evidence of industrial precursors. Yet absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The record is too incomplete, too fragile to close the case. As paleontologists often remind us, we see only a fraction of what once lived. The rest is gone, erased by erosion, tectonics, and time. And here, the philosophical tension deepens. Humanity's presence in the fossil record is still vanishingly brief. If our species were to disappear, what would remain after 10 million years? A layer of plastic fragments, a spike of carbon dioxide, perhaps traces of synthetic isotopes. A thin geological horizon, the Anthropocene, marking the brief age of industry. To future discoverers, it might seem like an anomaly, a brief fever in the planet's long history. If we ourselves would vanish so completely, is it impossible to imagine others have done so before? The unanswered question, the fossil record, is a mirror. It shows life in its grandeur, its cycles of creation and destruction. But it also shows how easily time erases. Every fossil is a miracle, every survival against the odds. For every species preserved, countless others are lost beyond recovery. Intelligence, in this light, is not guaranteed to leave evidence. It may be the most fragile trace of all, dependent on culture, tools, and artifacts more perishable than bone. Civilizations may burn bright and vanish, leaving only questions, never proof. The Silurian Hypothesis does not claim such civilizations existed. It claims only that if they did, we would struggle to find them. It transforms speculation into a scientific inquiry, grounded in the same humility that Lyell and Darwin brought to deep time, the recognition that the Earth is older, stranger, and less transparent than we once believed. And so the fossil record, though vast, cannot answer the forbidden question. It can only remind us that silence does not always mean absence, and that the ground beneath our feet may hide stories erased by the cruelty of time in the end. Paleontology reveals not certainty, but wonder. It shows that life is resilient, adaptive, and endlessly inventive. It also shows that intelligence, fragile and fleeting, may not be unique. Others may have walked this path, their bones dissolved, their works undone, their memory reduced to shadows in stone and whispers in chemistry. The story of Earth is long, and much of it is silent. Mountains rise and erode, seas advance and retreat, continents drift as if in a slow dream. Within this restless surface, the planet keeps a memory, but it is a memory written in stone, chemistry, and sediment, not in human language. What it preserves is uneven, fragile, and selective. In such an archive, what chance would an industrial civilization have of surviving the erasure of millions of years? In 2018, two scientists, astrophysicist Adam Frank and climatologist Gavin Schmidt, posed a question both startling and unsettling. Published in the International Journal of Astrobiology, their paper asked, if an advanced industrial civilization had once arisen on Earth millions of years before humanity, how would we detect it today? They called it the Silurian Hypothesis, a name drawn from a fictional race of intelligent reptiles in British science fiction. The hypothesis was not a claim that such civilizations existed. Rather, it was a thought experiment, an attempt to understand the limits of the geological record, and to confront the possibility that intelligence, even industrial intelligence, may not be as permanent as it seems. The fragility of civilization, Frank and Schmidt, began with a sobering observation. Human civilization itself is fragile. If it were to collapse tomorrow, how much would remain after 10 million years? Cities would crumble, metals would corrode, plastics would fragment, records would dissolve. Even the strongest monuments would fall. In the sweep of geological time, only a whisper would endure. The fossil record confirms this fragility. Entire ecosystems have vanished without a trace. Whole species, even dominant ones, are known only from a handful of fossils. If human civilization can leave so little, then what of any predecessors? The absence of evidence cannot, by itself, prove they never existed. The key lies not in artifacts, but in fingerprints left upon the earth itself. Geological fingerprints of industry. The Silurian Hypothesis asks what unmistakable signals an industrial age would imprint into geology. The scientists identified several candidates. 1. Carbon spikes. Industrial societies consume vast quantities of carbon. Humanity's own burning of fossil fuels has altered the balance of carbon isotopes in the atmosphere. Specifically the ratio of carbon-12 to carbon-13, this Swiss effect, as it is known, creates a signature that future geologists would be able to detect. A sudden, sharp spike in atmospheric carbon, unlike the slow rhythms of natural cycles. 2. Plastic layers. Plastics. Synthetic polymers, unknown to nature, are now produced by the billions of tons. They accumulate in oceans, rivers, and soils. While most degrade under sunlight, fragments persist, embedding themselves into sediments. Over millions of years, some plastics may fossilize as plastic glomerates, stones bound together by melted plastic. These would form a distinct layer in geological strata, a clear marker of artificial origin. 3. Isotope anomalies. Industrial civilization releases isotopes that are otherwise rare in nature. Nuclear activity leaves behind plutonium-244 and other long-lived isotopes that do not occur naturally in measurable quantities on Earth today. Their presence in rocks would be an unmistakable signal of technological activity. Even fertilizer production alters the balance of nitrogen isotopes in soils on a global scale. 4. Heavy metal distribution. Mining and industry redistribute heavy metals like lead, mercury, and chromium. These concentrations become embedded in sediments, forming another marker that future geologists could identify. Each of these fingerprints represents an enduring memory, one that outlasts cities, machines, and even species. The Anthropocene layer humanity itself is leaving behind such a fingerprint. Geologists now debate whether to name the present epoch the Anthropocene, the age in which human activity has become a geological force. This Anthropocene layer is distinct. It is characterized by carbon isotope shifts, rising greenhouse gases, mass extinctions, plastic residues, synthetic chemicals, and nuclear isotopes. To a future civilization millions of years hence, these signals would appear as a sudden rupture in the geologic record, a thin, unusual horizon, rich with anomalies not found in earlier strata. It would not reveal our art, our cities, or our philosophies, but it would reveal that an industrial civilization once existed, briefly, dramatically, and destructively. By studying the Anthropocene. Frank and Schmidt asked whether similar layers might already exist deep in Earth's past. Could there be horizons marked by unexplained carbon spikes, isotope shifts, or sediment anomalies that hint at something beyond natural causes? What lasts? What vanishes? To understand this, one must distinguish between what survives in deep time and what vanishes. What vanishes? Structures of wood, steel, and concrete, trikes of paper, clay, or digital form art, language, and culture. Most metals, unless continuously mined or recycled. What lasts? Geochemical signatures in sediments and rocks, fossilized plastics, and synthetic polymers, radioactive isotopes with long half-lives, perturbations in atmospheric gases and ocean chemistry. These traces are subject to the violence of geology. Subduction, erosion, and metamorphosis erase much of Earth's surface over tens of millions of years. The survival of evidence is a matter of chance. Yet, as Frank and Schmidt emphasized, if humanity leaves a detectable fingerprint, then so too might others, if they once existed. Searching for ancient signals, scientists already study anomalies in Earth's past. Mass extinctions leave distinctive signatures: the iridium spike at the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary, deposited by an asteroid impact; the carbon excursions that mark ancient episodes of climate upheaval; the isotopic shifts of the Permian extinction, when 90% of life perished. Most of these events have natural explanations, but the Silurian hypothesis suggests a new lens. What if some anomalies are technological in origin? A sudden carbon spike, for instance, might indicate fossil fuel combustion rather than volcanic activity. Synthetic isotopes could point to nuclear industry rather than natural fission. Plastics, if found in ancient strata, would be unmistakable. So far, no such evidence has been found. Yet the search continues, and the very act of asking the question deepens humanity's awareness of its own fragility. The philosophical implications. The Silurian hypothesis is less about proving ancient civilizations than about humility. It reminds humanity that its existence is brief, its record fragile, and its permanence uncertain. If humans were to vanish, their memory would shrink to a thin horizon in stone, a few centimeters of sediment, across the immensity of geologic time. And if that is true of us, it may have been true of others. The silence of the record may not mean absence. It may mean erasure. In this sense, the hypothesis is not only scientific, but philosophical. It frames human civilization as part of a continuum, not the pinnacle of history, but one experiment among many that Earth may have hosted. Intelligence may arise, flourish, and vanish, leaving only a trace in the chemistry of stone. The weight of the question. When Adam Frank was asked why he pursued such a thought experiment, he spoke of planetary science and the search for life beyond Earth. By understanding how civilizations leave traces, scientists might better detect them on Mars, Venus, or exoplanets orbiting distant stars. But in turning that lens upon Earth itself, the question became haunting. Could this planet already bear the scars of forgotten civilizations? The Silurian hypothesis does not prove that others came before, but it opens the door to possibility. It shows that geology can keep secrets, and that time is more ruthless than imagination. A thin layer in stone in the end. The Earth is patient. It buries, erases, and rewrites. The Anthropocene, so vivid in the present, will shrink to a layer no thicker than a finger's breadth in rock. Within that layer, future beings may find traces: plastics fossilized into stone, isotopes glowing faintly, carbon ratios forever altered. They will know that we existed, though not who we were. And as they sift those sediments, perhaps they too will wonder, were there others, long before us, who burned brightly and vanished? Did the Earth host more than one age of industry, more than one chapter of intelligence? The Silurian hypothesis leaves humanity with a sobering thought. The story of civilization may not be unique. It may be one verse in a longer song, sung by the Earth itself, a melody of rise and erasure, of memory and silence. The Earth is not gentle. Beneath its blue skies and calm horizons, it is a planet forged in fire and broken by catastrophe. In deep time, cataclysm is not the exception but the rule. Oceans have boiled and frozen, mountains have shattered, and skies have darkened under falling fire. Entire worlds have ended here, not once, but many times. For any civilization, this truth is terrifying. Humanity itself has only known history within the narrow comfort of a stable climate. Yet the record of geology speaks of moments when the planet turned violent, erasing not just species, but the very landscapes upon which they stood. If other civilizations had once risen before humanity, these catastrophes could have destroyed them so completely that only whispers, myths, or anomalies in stone would remain. Asteroid strikes, fire from the sky 66 million years ago. A rock from space ended the reign of the dinosaurs. 10 kilometers across, traveling at 20 kilometers per second. It struck the Yucatan Peninsula with the force of billions of nuclear weapons. The impact excavated a crater more than 150 kilometers wide. Shockwaves rippled across the planet. Fires consumed forests, tsunamis swallowed coastlines, and the atmosphere filled with ash. Sunlight dimmed, photosynthesis failed, and ecosystems collapsed. Within years, 3/4 of all species were gone. This was not the only such impact. Earth's surface carries scars from earlier collisions. The Vredefort crater in South Africa, over 2 billion years old. The Sudbury Basin in Canada, nearly 2 billion. The Papagai impact in Siberia, 35 million years ago. Each reshaped the biosphere. Cities would vaporize, records incinerate, and survivors, if any, would be left to rebuild in a hostile wasteland. After millions of years, little would remain but a thin layer of iridium and shocked quartz. To future archaeologists, it would seem as though nothing intelligent had ever lived. Supervolcanoes, the Earth's hidden fury beneath the crust. Magma gathers in vast chambers, building pressure over thousands of years. When released, the result is a supereruption, an event dwarfing any volcanic eruption in recorded history 70-4,000 years ago. The eruption of Mount Toba in present-day Indonesia ejected nearly 3,000 cubic kilometers of ash. For years, skies darkened, global temperatures plummeted, and ecosystems suffered. Some genetic studies suggest that humanity itself was reduced to tens of thousands of individuals, teetering on the edge of extinction. Other supervolcanoes lie dormant: Yellowstone in the United States, Topo in New Zealand, Campi Flegrei in Italy. Each has the potential to alter the climate for centuries. If such eruptions have occurred repeatedly across deep time, what civilizations, if any, might they have silenced? Unlike asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes leave fewer dramatic signatures. Their ash settles, their craters collapse, and over millions of years erosion erases their scars. For an ancient civilization, such eruptions could erase not only populations, but the evidence of their existence. Ice ages, the world in deep freeze. The Earth has shivered through cycles of ice. Over the past 2.6 million years, glaciers have advanced and retreated in rhythm, covering continents with sheets of ice kilometers thick. But further back, in the Proterozoic era, the planet may have endured snowball Earth events, times when ice extended nearly to the equator. Oceans frozen, life confined to small refuges beneath the ice. In such frozen worlds, entire regions vanish beneath glaciers. Rivers grind valleys into new shapes, mountains are scoured bare, and evidence of habitation is crushed into dust. If civilizations existed during such epochs, their traces would be buried or obliterated. When the ice melted, seas rose and drowned coastlines, washing away whatever survived. Even in more recent prehistory, the melting of the last ice age transformed the planet. Vast coastal plains disappeared under rising seas, drowning the homelands of Paleolithic peoples. Myths of floods, carried across cultures from Mesopotamia to Polynesia, may echo these drowned worlds. But what else might have vanished beneath the rising tide? Lost worlds in mythocross, human culture. Myths tell of civilizations destroyed by catastrophe. Though often dismissed as allegory, these stories bear uncanny similarities. The tale of Atlantis, first recorded by Plato, speaks of an island empire, larger than Libya and Asia combined, that sank beneath the sea in a single day and night. Scholars debate whether Plato drew from memory of earlier floods, from Egyptian tales, or from allegory. Yet the myth endures, resonating with the fear that entire civilizations can be swallowed by the ocean. In South India, legends speak of Kumari Kandam, a lost landmass submerged beneath the Indian Ocean. Tamil traditions describe it as the cradle of civilization, a continent that vanished in flood. Similar myths echo in Polynesia, in the Pacific legends of Mu, and in Native American stories of sunken lands and drowned peoples, though geology does not support the existence of vast missing continents. The resonance of these myths suggests cultural memory of real cataclysms, rising seas, sudden floods, lost homelands. For prehistoric peoples, the drowning of entire landscapes would be indistinguishable from the end of the world. For any earlier civilization, such events could erase history itself. The psychological terror of erasure, the fragility of memory, is the true terror. Humanity imagines itself permanent, its history enduring. Yet the earth is ruthless. Within centuries, forests reclaim abandoned cities. Within millennia, ice or sand bury monuments. Within millions of years, continents grind against one another, recycling surface into molten rock. Imagine a civilization erased, not just in body, but in memory. Its art dissolved, its languages unspoken, its tools turned to dust. Imagine that only myths, carried forward in whispers, survived, stripped of context, transformed into allegory, reduced to fragments of story. This is the horror that catastrophe brings, the erasure not only of life, but of meaning. Entire histories can vanish, leaving only silence where once there were voices. Catastrophes, as filter speak of the great filter, the idea that civilizations may rise in the cosmos only to be destroyed by forces they cannot survive. On Earth, these filters are written into geology. Asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, ice ages. Each is a barrier that life must pass through. Humanity has been fortunate to emerge in a relatively stable epoch, but the record of the past warns that stability is temporary. If other civilizations rose in earlier ages, these filters may have ended them. If intelligence existed in the age of dinosaurs, it perished with them when fire fell from the sky. If mammals once reached industry before humans, a supervolcano may have erased them. If coastal peoples built societies during earlier ice ages, rising seas may have buried their memory. The possibility is sobering. Civilizations may not vanish because they fail, but because the planet itself resets the stage. The silence after catastrophe. What follows catastrophe is silence. After the Chicxulub impact, ecosystems collapsed into darkness. After Toba ash dimmed the sun and forests withered, after ice advanced, whole continents fell silent under glaciers. Within that silence, history disappears. Bones dissolve, records burn, and landscapes are rewritten. Millions of years later, geologists might find only subtle anomalies, a carbon spike, a layer of ash, an extinction horizon. To them, it would appear as nature's work, not civilization's. And so the question lingers: how many times has history been erased? How many worlds have ended before this one, their memory sealed beneath stone and myth? Forgotten worlds, endless time. Earth's timeline is vast enough to hold countless stories. Human civilization occupies only the last few thousand years. The planet, meanwhile, has endured 4.5 billion. In that immensity, there is space for cycles of rise and fall, for forgotten ages, for civilizations undone by catastrophe and erased beyond memory. The myths of Atlantis, Kumari and sunken Pacific continents may not describe literal lost continents, but they speak to a deeper truth: the fragility of civilization before the fury of Earth, whether myth or memory. They remind us that the ground beneath us is not stable, and the oceans are never still in the face of asteroids, supervolcanoes, and ice. The permanence of humanity is an illusion. We may one day share the fate of forgotten worlds, reduced to whispers, erased by catastrophe, remembered only in fragments of myth. A haunting possibility. The escalation of mystery is this: not merely that catastrophes erase civilizations, but that they may have already done so. The silence of the fossil record, the anomalies of stone, the myths of lost lands, all may be echoes of histories erased. If time is vast and catastrophe is certain, then perhaps humanity is not the first, but only the latest. Perhaps others have risen, only to be undone by fire, ice, or flood, their memory reduced to silence. The terror lies not in knowing, but in never being able to know. The earth is patient, and its catastrophes thorough. What is forgotten may never be recovered. Speculation is the bridge between silence and meaning. Where evidence runs thin, imagination stretches forward, guided by science, tempered by humility. The mystery of whether humanity is the first civilization on Earth invites both rigor and wonder. Within this tension, theories take shape, some grounded in evolutionary biology and planetary science, others drifting closer to the fringes of possibility. Each reflects a deeper truth. The story of intelligence is fragile, contingent, and perhaps cyclical. Evolutionary bottlenecks, the narrow gates of life. The history of life is not smooth, but punctuated. Extinction events mark bottlenecks, narrow gates through which only fragments of biodiversity survive. After each catastrophe, evolution begins anew, branching along unexpected paths. The Permian-Triassic extinction, 252 million years ago, was the most severe. Over 90% of species vanished. Ecosystems collapsed into silence. Yet, in the aftermath, new forms flourished, reptiles expanded, early ancestors of mammals appeared, and the stage was set for dinosaurs. Bottlenecks are both destroyers and creators. They erase complexity, but they also open ecological space for new experiments. If intelligence is an evolutionary possibility, then bottlenecks may erase it repeatedly, forcing it to re-emerge in altered guises. Humanity may not be unique, but simply the latest success in a series of evolutionary trials. most of which ended unseen. Convergent evolution. Patterns in nature cross the tree of life. Similar solutions arise independently. Wings evolved in insects, birds, and bats. Eyes emerged multiple times, from mollusks to mammals. Echolocation developed in both dolphins and bats, separated by oceans and ancestry. This phenomenon, known as convergent evolution, suggests that intelligence itself may not be singular. Octopuses, though separated from mammals by hundreds of millions of years, display problem-solving, tool use, and even play. Crows fashion hooks from twigs to retrieve food. Dolphins coordinate complex hunts through communication. If convergent evolution favors intelligence under certain conditions, then it may have appeared more than once in Earth's past. Not always in human form, not always industrial, but capable of awareness, problem-solving, perhaps even culture. If given time, such intelligence could rise to levels unseen in the fossil record, and if erased by catastrophe, it might leave little behind but silence. Planetary cycles. The rhythm of catastrophe. Earth itself moves in cycles. Ice advances and retreats. Continents drift and collide. Oceans open and close. Climate warms, then cools. Each cycle reshapes the stage upon which life acts. Astrobiologists note that planets may host habitable windows, periods when conditions are stable enough for complex life to flourish. Yet these windows may open and close multiple times. Earth has endured at least 5 major mass extinctions, each a reset of complexity. Could civilizations rise in these windows, only to fall when cycles close? Could intelligence be a recurring feature, appearing and vanishing like a rhythm written into planetary history? If so, humanity may stand not at the beginning, but within the latest verse of an ancient song. Ancient, advanced humans. Some speculate that advanced humans may have existed far earlier than archaeology suggests. The conventional timeline places modern Homo sapiens at roughly 300,000 years ago, with agriculture emerging around 10,000 years ago. Yet, anatomically modern humans lived for tens of thousands of years before recorded history. What if some branch, now forgotten, reached greater complexity than we imagine? Evidence is thin, and mainstream science finds no trace of ancient industry beyond a few tens of thousands of years. Yet the silence of prehistory leaves space for speculation. Could cycles of civilization have risen and fallen during the last ice age, their remains drowned by rising seas? Could myths of lost golden ages echo distant human experiments now erased? Though lacking proof, the idea unsettles. Perhaps humanity has lived through its own forgotten ages, repeating cycles of rise and collapse. Non-human intelligence, the roads not taken. Other speculations turn toward lineages beyond humanity. Reptilian intelligence. Dinosaurs, reigning for over 160 million years, had time to explore evolutionary possibilities. Some species, like Truden, possessed relatively large brain-to-body ratios. Paleontologist Dale Russell once imagined that, had they not gone extinct, they might have evolved into intelligent, tool-using beings. His hypothetical dinosauroid remains conjecture, but it raises the question: could intelligence have arisen in reptilian forms before, only to vanish with the Chicxulub impact? Avian intelligence. Birds, descendants of dinosaurs, display striking cognition. Crows solve puzzles. Parrots mimic and comprehend human language. Pigeons navigate with magnetic senses. Given millions of years, could avian intelligence have developed into complex societies? Their bones, fragile and light, fossilize poorly. If avian civilizations existed, their traces might be nearly invisible today. Cephalopod intelligence, octopuses, squid, and cuttlefish are evolutionary outliers, mollusks with advanced nervous systems. They demonstrate problem-solving, short and long-term memory, and even individuality of behavior. Their lineage is ancient, stretching back over 500 million years. Had their lifespans been longer, or their environments more stable, might they have achieved even greater complexity. Yet their soft bodies fossilize poorly, leaving little evidence. If an octopus civilization had risen in ancient seas, it would leave almost nothing behind. These roads not taken remind us that intelligence is not tied to human form. It may emerge wherever evolution finds advantage, and it may vanish without trace. Earth to the cosmos. The Fermi paradox asks why, in a galaxy of billions of stars, no signs of alien civilizations are seen. One answer is the Great Filter, the idea that civilizations self-destruct before spreading into space. On Earth. This filter may manifest in cycles of catastrophe and collapse. Intelligence creates industry. Industry alters climate. Altered climate destabilizes civilization. If this pattern holds, then perhaps intelligence is destined to erase itself, leaving only brief geological signatures before vanishing. From this cosmic view, humanity may be typical, not exceptional. Civilizations rise, burn brightly, and fall, not only on Earth, but across the galaxy. Each leaves behind only traces in stone, in isotopes, in the silence of the stars. Balancing science and speculation. Mainstream science demands evidence, fossils, artifacts, isotopes. By that standard, no proof exists of civilizations before humanity. Yet, speculation has value when it clarifies the boundaries of knowledge. The Silurian Hypothesis itself is not a claim but an inquiry. Could civilizations vanish so completely that only chemistry remembers them? Speculation also expands perspective. It reminds humanity that its history is fragile, its permanence uncertain. It invites humility, the recognition that what is known is only a fraction of what has been. In this balance, the line between rigorous science and imaginative possibility blurs. Evolutionary bottlenecks, convergent evolution, and planetary cycles provide plausible frameworks for intelligence to emerge repeatedly. Myths of lost worlds, ideas of reptilian or cephalopod intelligence extend those frameworks into possibility. The cosmic perspective frames it all within a larger question: is intelligence inherently self-destructive? The fragile spark at the heart of these theories lies a single idea. Intelligence is fragile. It may arise in reptiles, birds, cephalopods. It may flourish briefly, then vanish. It may survive catastrophe or perish with it. Its traces may endure in chemistry or be erased by time. Humanity itself is but one expression of this fragile spark. Its permanence is not guaranteed. Its uniqueness is not certain. In the vastness of Earth's history, intelligence may have risen more than once and may yet rise again. Long after humanity is gone, to peer into the deep past is to wrestle with silence. Fossils tell fragments of stories. Rocks whisper of vanished climates. Myths preserve shadows of forgotten worlds. But to truly ask whether civilizations might have come before, science must arm itself with instruments, tools capable of reading the earth as though it were a palimpsest, its hidden histories layered in ice, stone, and chemistry. Today, humanity possesses such tools. With them, scientists probe the Earth's memory, searching not for bones or monuments, but for signatures subtle enough to survive deep time, chemical anomalies, sedimentary scars, atmospheric shifts. Each discovery sharpens our awareness of how fragile civilization is and how faint its traces may become. Ice cores, time frozen in crystalline Antarctica and Greenland. Ice lies in layers, stacked like pages, each snowfall compressed into crystal archives. Drilled from kilometers deep, ice cores preserve bubbles of ancient air, dust from distant volcanoes, and the chemical fingerprints of past climates. By analyzing carbon dioxide and methane trapped in these bubbles, scientists reconstruct the rhythms of Earth's atmosphere across hundreds of thousands of years. Spikes of greenhouse gases reveal sudden warming. Ash layers mark eruptions. Isotope ratios trace cycles of glaciation. If an ancient civilization had burned fossil fuels, its carbon imprint might echo faintly in such records. A sharp deviation in carbon-12 to carbon-13 ratios, the same Swiss effect humans produce today, could betray industry long erased. No such anomaly has yet been found, but the cores remain among the clearest ledgers of atmospheric change. Proof that even the air can remember. Ocean drilling programs, the memory of sediment beneath the waves. Sediments accumulate grain by grain, carried by rivers, winds, and currents. They fall to the seafloor, layering over millions of years. Within them lie pollen grains, microfossils, and traces of chemistry, a continuous record of Earth's oceans and climates. The International Ocean Discovery Program sends drilling ships across the world's seas, extracting cores that reach back tens of millions of years. These cores reveal mass extinctions, shifts in ocean chemistry, and even the faint residues of asteroid impacts. To the question of forgotten civilizations, sediments may offer answers. Plastics, heavy metals, and synthetic chemicals all could be locked into these layers, preserved as future markers of industry. Scientists searching for ancient anomalies look for spikes of carbon, abrupt shifts in isotopes, or chemical traces that cannot be explained by volcanism or natural cycles. The seafloor, vast and patient, may yet hold secrets of ages before our own. Satellite imaging. Eyes above the Earth. Where archaeology once relied on shovels, it now turns to satellites. From orbit, instruments scan Earth in every wavelength of light, infrared to reveal buried structures, radar to peer beneath desert sands, LiDAR to strip away jungle canopies and uncover forgotten cities. Entire civilizations have been rediscovered this way. The lost cities of the Maya emerged from the Guatemalan rainforest through LiDAR, revealing networks of pyramids, roads, and terraces invisible from the ground. Ancient riverbeds, long buried beneath Sahara sands, were traced through radar, proving that the desert once held fertile plains. If civilizations older than known history had once existed, their ruins may yet lie hidden beneath ice, jungle, or sea. Satellites extend human vision across the globe, mapping anomalies, charting coastlines, and probing landscapes for signs of unnatural geometry. They are tools not only for studying the present, but for scanning the past. Geochemistry, the language of stone at the most fundamental level. The Earth keeps its memory in chemistry. Ratios of isotopes reveal cycles of carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. Layers rich in iridium testify to asteroids. Shifts in sulfur mark volcanic winters. Lead, mercury, and chromium bear the fingerprint of mining and metallurgy. Geochemists analyze rocks with precision instruments, searching for signals too subtle for the eye. Even synthetic materials, like plastics and persistent organic pollutants, can endure as chemical ghosts long after their structure dissolves. Nuclear isotopes with long half-lives, cesium-137, plutonium-244, could persist as faint signatures for millions of years if earlier civilizations existed. Geochemistry may be the only surviving record, a thin horizon of anomalous chemistry, unexplained by natural cycles, could be the sole evidence that intelligence once touched the Earth before us. Ongoing projects searching for ancient signatures. Science has already catalogued many anomalies. The Paleocene thermal maximum 56 million years ago left a dramatic spike in carbon isotopes, suggesting a sudden release of greenhouse gases. The cause remains debated: volcanic eruptions, methane hydrates, or something else. Could it represent, in some unimaginable way, a civilization's industry? Most scientists doubt it, but the anomaly remains. Ocean cores, ice cores, and sediments continue to yield surprises. Researchers search for abrupt chemical shifts, unusual isotopes, or layers of materials without natural explanation. Each anomaly invites interpretation, and though most have natural causes, the possibility of intelligence lingers as a shadow behind the data. The work is slow, meticulous, and often ambiguous. Yet, with every core drilled, every isotope measured, science moves closer to answering the question: are we alone in Earth's history? NASA, SETI, and the mirror of Earth. The search for other civilizations is not limited to Earth. For decades, SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, has scanned the skies for radio signals, laser flashes, or other technosignatures. NASA's missions study exoplanets, analyzing their atmospheres for chemical imbalances that could betray industry or life. Here lies the strange symmetry. The same methods used to search for aliens can be turned upon Earth itself. If we hope to detect civilizations light years away by their atmospheric chemistry, then we must admit that similar traces on Earth could reveal civilizations buried in time. The Silurian Hypothesis, posed by Adam Frank and Gavin Schmidt, made this parallel explicit. The tools of planetary science could expose not only aliens, but forgotten chapters of our own world. In this way, the search for others becomes a search for ourselves. By studying Earth as though it were an alien planet, we may uncover what history has erased. The philosophical weight of science. These tools, ice cores, drilling programs, satellites, geochemistry, do more than test hypotheses. They remind humanity of its impermanence. For if we look into ice and stone to ask whether civilizations came before, we must also accept that ours, too, will one day be reduced to a thin horizon of anomalies: plastics in sediments, carbon spikes in air bubbles, isotopes glowing faintly in rock. These may be all that survive of humanity after millions of years. Cities, languages, and cultures will be gone, erased by time. Our memory will shrink to chemistry, and so science becomes reflection. The search for forgotten civilizations is also a meditation on our own fragility. If no traces are found, it may be because none existed, Or it may be because time erases all but the faintest whispers. The silent archive. Earth is an archive written without intention. Its language is sediment and ice, isotope and fossil. With modern tools, humanity is learning to read that language more deeply than ever before. But the archive is incomplete, full of gaps and silences. Ice cores freeze moments in crystal. Sediments bury the memory of oceans. Satellites uncover geometry hidden by forest and sand. Geochemistry reveals the fingerprints of forces, both natural and artificial. Together, these tools form a mirror, reflecting not only the past, but the impermanence of the present. Through them, humanity peers into silence, asking questions that may never be fully answered. Did others walk this path before us? Did civilizations rise and fall, their memory reduced to whispers in stone? Or are we truly the first, alone in the deep past of this planet? Science cannot yet say. But with every core, every image, every measurement, the silence grows thinner. To imagine that humanity may not be the first civilization on Earth is to invite a quiet terror. It is not the fear of extinction alone, nor the fear of insignificance. It is the dread that all human effort, every monument, every work of art, every philosophy and memory might be only one verse in a song that has been sung before and will be sung again, endlessly erased and rewritten by time. If humanity is not the first, then it is not unique. The story of intelligence would no longer be singular but cyclical, a repeating dream rising from the earth, fading into silence, and returning again in altered form. To accept this possibility is to look into a mirror that reflects not permanence but impermanence, the fragility of civilizations set against the eternity of stone. The weight of impermanence. Culture imagines its works to be lasting. Pyramids, cathedrals, skyscrapers, they are built as defiance against time. Yet geology is indifferent. Within a few thousand years, forests reclaim stone. Within a few million mountains grind it into dust. Seas rise, ice advances, continents shift. If other civilizations once stood upon this earth, where are their monuments now? Erased, buried, eroded, beyond recognition. What survives is not architecture, but chemistry, a thin layer of altered carbon, an isotope anomaly, a scattering of minerals. Humanity's own future record may be no different. The Anthropocene, so visible now, will shrink into a horizon of sediments. Our cities will be gone, our names forgotten, our memory dissolved into stone. Impermanence is the true legacy of deep time. And if others have already endured this fate, then humanity walks knowingly toward the same horizon. Cycles of rise and silence. The possibility of prior civilizations reframes history as a cycle, not a line. Intelligence may not be a singular achievement, but a recurring emergence. Each time it rises, it flourishes briefly in evolutionary terms. Perhaps a few tens of thousands of years before catastrophe or self-destruction returns the planet to silence. Cataclysms leave no room for continuity. Asteroids, supervolcanoes, or ice ages erase memory as well as life. If intelligence has risen before, it has not persisted. It has vanished so completely that only speculation remains. Humanity, too, may be one more cycle, destined to leave no greater trace than those imagined predecessors. The terror lies in recognizing this pattern. If civilizations rise and fall repeatedly, then permanence is an illusion. The meaning of history is not endurance, but recurrence. Humanity is not the first flame, nor the last, but one in a series of sparks that flare and fade. The chilling possibility to accept that we may not be the first is to confront an abyss. It means that all our triumphs, science, art, exploration, may already have been mirrored in forgotten ages. It means that our technology, our industry, our hopes of permanence are not novel but echoes of a rhythm older than memory. The chilling possibility is this: history may not be a story of progress, but of amnesia. Civilizations rise, they burn, they collapse. Their traces vanish. Then, after ages of silence, the earth brings forth another, as though intelligence were a dream it cannot let go. Each time, the dream forgets itself. Each time, it believes it is the first. Humanity may be no different. Our monuments may vanish. Our knowledge may be forgotten. One day, if others rise after us, they may walk through our ruins and see only stone, unable to imagine the civilization that once was. Philosophical reflections. Diminishment or connection does this? Thought diminish humanity, or does it connect us to something eternal? On one hand, it humbles. The belief that humanity is unique sustains pride and purpose. To imagine we are but one of many, erased like those before us, strips away that comfort. It renders human history fragile, fleeting, perhaps insignificant. On the other hand, it expands perspective. If intelligence is cyclical, then humanity is part of a larger pattern woven into Earth itself. We are not alone, even in time. The spark of awareness is not singular but recurrent, an expression of the planet's long memory. In this view, humanity is connected to something eternal, not permanence, but recurrence, not immortality, but belonging. The terror of silence, perhaps the deepest fear, is not that others came before, but that we will share their fate, total erasure. Silence is the final victor. The earth remembers in chemistry, but it forgets in meaning. Art, music, language, love, all dissolve, leaving only traces without context. If civilizations rise and fall, then silence has claimed them all, and it will claim us. The terror is not extinction itself, but the certainty of forgetting. A fragile hope, yet within this terror lies a fragile hope. If intelligence has risen before, it may rise again. Awareness may be a recurring gift, reborn each time the earth recovers from catastrophe. Civilization, though impermanent, may be part of an endless cycle of renewal. The spark of thought, though fragile, may never truly vanish. It may be carried forward in ways unseen, not in memory, but in potential. Humanity, even if forgotten, would not be wasted. It would be one expression in a series of awakenings, each as fragile, each as brief, but each part of a larger pattern written into the life of Earth. The emotional terror of not being first is the terror of impermanence. It is the realization that civilization is fragile, that permanence is illusion, that silence is inevitable. But it is also the realization that intelligence may not be a singular miracle, but a recurring dream of the earth. If we are not the first, then we are part of something larger, a cycle of awareness rising and vanishing, a rhythm older than memory. Our monuments will fall, our names will fade, but the spark of thought may return again, carried forward not by us, but by the earth itself. And so the question remains, both haunting and profound: does this diminish us or connect us to something eternal? It holds the memory of oceans and mountains, yet it forgets with equal precision. Forests consume ruins. Rivers wash away walls. Fire turns cities to ash. Stone itself fractures, and melts. What endures is not the detail of history, but its faintest echoes, a layer of ash, a line of carbon, the shimmer of isotopes in rock. To stand upon this truth is to feel the weight of impermanence. Every monument, every library, every human name is fragile against the scales of deep time. Civilizations rise as sparks and fall into silence. Their brilliance is real, yet fleeting. The question, haunting and unresolved, lingers like mist at the horizon. If others came before, what became of them? And what, in time, will become of us? Imagine the Earth 10 million years hence. Continents have drifted, mountains have shifted, deserts have wandered with the wind. Where cities once rose, forests stand. Rivers flow across plains once marked by roads. Skyscrapers are long gone, their steel corroded, their glass reduced to sand. The sea has risen, reshaped, and retreated again. If future archaeologists, human or otherwise, walked these landscapes, what would they see? Perhaps fragments of concrete hardened into stone, plastics fused into sediments, a thin horizon marked by a carbon spike. Nothing of our languages, nothing of our cultures, only the faint residue of industry pressed into the geology of Earth. The ruins of tomorrow remind us that civilization is temporary. No matter how vast it appears today, humanity stands not as the permanent crown of creation, but as a chapter destined to fade into the long silence of stone. The humility of cosmic perspective astronomy has already humbled humanity. It has shown that the Earth is not the center of the cosmos, but a small planet orbiting an ordinary star in one galaxy among billions. The cosmic perspective reveals that life itself may be common, intelligence perhaps rare, and permanence non-existent. The possibility that we are not the first even on Earth is a deeper humbling still. To think that intelligence has flared before and been extinguished is to recognize that we are not unique, not even in time. We may be only the latest in a series of awakenings, each undone by catastrophe or erasure. This perspective does not strip life of meaning. Instead, it reframes meaning as fragile. Intelligence is not the destiny of the universe, but its experiment, an experiment repeated, erased, and repeated again. The cycle of forgetting. If civilizations rise and fall in cycles, then history is not a line, but a wheel. Each age believes itself unique, yet each may echo forgotten predecessors. Knowledge rises, flourishes, and vanishes. The cycle of forgetting becomes as fundamental as evolution itself for humanity. This cycle is both terrifying and instructive. Terrifying because it suggests that nothing endures. Instructive because it reveals the urgency of preservation. If the Earth forgets, then civilization must learn to remember for itself. But how does one break the cycle of forgetting? How does one preserve meaning against the erasure of deep time? The responsibility of memory of others came before. Their silence teaches a lesson. The lesson is not despair, but responsibility. Humanity holds within its hands not permanence, but the fragile possibility of continuity. The choice is whether to vanish like forgotten civilizations, or to preserve knowledge in forms that may endure beyond catastrophe. Already, attempts are being made. The Long Now Foundation seeks to build clocks that tick for 10,000 years. Libraries are etched into metal plates and sapphire discs. Data is stored in synthetic DNA, encoded in molecules that could last for millennia. Some projects aim to launch archives into space. to place memory beyond the reach of terrestrial catastrophe. These efforts are small, fragile, and uncertain, but they reflect an understanding that civilization must think not only of decades, but of geological time. To break the cycle of forgetting requires vision measured not in centuries, but in millions of years. The fragile spark at the heart of this reflection is the spark of intelligence itself. It is fragile, contingent, and temporary. It arises not as inevitability, but as accident. It is sustained by stability, yet threatened by the very forces it unleashes. Humanity's spark is precious because it is rare. In 4.5 billion years of Earth's history, it has flared only once in a form capable of reaching space, of reflecting on its own impermanence. And if it has flared before, then its rarity is no less, for each time it rose, it was undone, erased, and forgotten. To recognize this fragility is to feel both awe and dread. Because the spark exists at all. Dread, because it may not endure. The silence of deep time is silent. It speaks in stone, but it does not speak of meaning. If civilizations came before, their voices are gone. Their art, their music, their hopes, all dissolved into silence. What remains is only the faintest chemical trace, stripped of context, incapable of telling a story. Humanity itself may share this fate. 10 million years from now, the Earth will not remember our languages, our art, or our dreams. It will remember only our carbon, our plastics, our isotopes. Memory becomes residue. History becomes chemistry. This silence is both terrifying and beautiful. Terrifying because it erases. Beautiful because it reminds us that meaning is not guaranteed. Meaning exists only while we live, while we speak, while we remember. It must be made anew in every age. The cosmic questioning the end. The question of whether we are the first touches something beyond science. It touches the meaning of existence itself. If intelligence is cyclical, then life is not a ladder climbing toward permanence, but a tide that rises and falls. If intelligence is unique, then humanity carries a responsibility unlike any before it. The cosmos offers no answer. It remains silent, indifferent, vast. It allows for cycles. It allows for uniqueness. It allows for erasure. The burden falls to humanity to decide what to make of its brief time in the light. A future archaeology picture, the Earth 100 million years from now. A future species digs into the stone. It finds a thin horizon, rich with plastics and isotopes. It asks, what was this? It speculates about an age of industry, a brief fever in the planet's history. It debates whether intelligence once existed, then shrugs at the silence of proof. Perhaps it imagines us, as we imagine Atlantis, a story half believed. Perhaps it sees us not as unique, but as one more forgotten age. Perhaps it does not find us at all, and the silence remains unbroken. This future archaeology is not fantasy, but inevitability. One day, others, whether human descendants or new intelligences, will look back upon us. What they see will depend on what we leave and how deeply we have thought about the permanence of memory. The final reflection, the philosophical reflection, closes not with certainty, but with humility. Humanity is fragile, impermanent, and perhaps not unique. Its history may be one among many, erased and repeated, or it may be singular and alone. Both possibilities carry weight. Both demand reflection. If we are not the first, then we are part of something eternal, a cycle of awareness, rising and vanishing, a rhythm older than memory. If we are the first, then we carry a responsibility unlike any before, to preserve intelligence, to extend it beyond Earth, to keep the spark alive. The haunting truth is that we do not know. The silence of the Earth hides its secrets well, yet in that silence lies the power of the question itself. For the question forces humanity to see its fragility, to confront its and to reflect on what it means to exist at all. And so the narration ends as it began, with a question whispered across the abyss of time. If others came before, what became of them? And what, in time, will become of us?